All right, continuing with this great book. We get to like where the one thing people always noticed about Japanese, whether it was the comics or the animation, was the craziness of it. Was the inappropriateness to the Western mind of a lot of things, which is funny considering how things were going in the West back then and how things have gone now. It's almost like it's like a joke. It's like history is a historicism is playing a prank on us. uh, when they go over some of the, you know, sex, nudity, crazy violence, other things. Oh, going to guy, right? Shameless high school, right? Whereas the wrath of the PTAs across Japan. Of course, you know me. I'm a big going to guy fan. Not so much of this stuff, or this. I remember this weird. What the? I still don't know what the hell. Gaki Ducka. I remember that. I still don't know what the hell it is. Kid cop, but he does all kind. He doesn't act like a kid. He acts like a psycho in the street. But the violence, right? We think of the violence. Of course, Devil Man, right? One of the fucking Devil Man is such a great comic. Very grim, very interesting. Of course, going the guy. It's the bloods the way you blow on the ink. Right? Then we go here to Frank Miller. From a January 82 interview with at the time Daredevil artist Frank Miller. He was about to go on and do a bunch of other things. Right? Japanese comics are as violent as anything I've ever seen. The violence in them is rather honest. They're willing to be violent and admit that that's what they want in their fiction. I think that we, Westerners, are much more hypocritical about it. Yes. I like that. I don't see the guilt as necessary. Okay, it's definitely not the same thing to read a violent story as it is to hit somebody. Right? You talk about the violence has a stigma in it. Right? To have moral concept worked out on paper in a world where people fight for them, I think that's a lot of what draws our audiences to comics. Right? The irony, of course, is that when you bring up Sanpei Shirado's his ninja stuff. Right? I went over some of those. Right? The violence was ridiculous. Right, the pay library comic market is where a lot of these were from. Right, heads rolling, eyes gouged out, showers of blood. Right, created by soaking a brush in ink and then blowing on it. Right there. With more violence. Oh, Yukio Mishima. Right. Article on comics and youth in the Sunday, some magazine in 1970. Not too far before he did what he did. In 1952, when I visited the United States for the first time, I was surprised first by the flood of comics I saw there, and second by the fact that they were cheap. That is shred of the sophistication of the old Blondie strips and read mainly by adults. Compared with American comics, those of Japan contain a brooding sort of eroticism and violence, but their gags verge on the avant-garde. My only interest in Japanese comics developed through samurai comics, in a search for something that did not exist in America. Now, of course, children's comics in the U.S. provided dramatic contrast. Right? Creativity and circulations were at a peak in the 50s. Right, a moralistic coalition of educators. What was that guy's name? What the hell was that guy's name? The German doctor, who fled Germany for some reason. What the hell was his name? He was the big guy on that. The comics contributed to juvenile delinquency, right, and depravity. So the horror comics, they're very popular gangster comics. Of course, many of these comics are being read by adults, but under pressure, the U.S. Senate subcommittee, I think juvenile delinquency held a special hearing into the matter. Isn't it hilarious back then? When you think about the violence that was about to come into America to a level never seen in the late 60s and into the 70s, that they were pulling stuff like this. Right? After committing violence against the world in the previous decade, the comic book industry, right, was so intimidated, right? It's the whole EC Comics, right? It established the Comics Code Authority to self-regulate, right? Self-censorship. The seal of the code still graces the covers of most American comic books today. Well, this is from '83. The authorities and government officials must always be portrayed in a good light. Good must always triumph over evil. The word crime, right? The word horror, right? The word must not appear on the cover. Right? A family system must not be mocked. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Of course. the family was being destroyed in other ways. But all sex, bad language, violence was prohibited. Right, the vast majority of Japanese children's comics they would be disqualified. Right, so there were unhealthy trends of racism, sexism, and glorification of violence in American comics in the 50s, but they're present in all media and in society at large. It was more functioning society. This code was a form of overkill that permanently crippled the medium. Well, you're left with moralistic superheroes, right? Glorified U.S. military, right? The war comics, and the funny animals, right? Circulations plummeted, right? As the number of artists and publishers, right? This is interesting. The numbers here. Oh, where's your source? Oh, come on, let's start. 1954, total American comic book circulation was estimated at 1 billion. Today it is around 138 million. It ain't even nothing like that now. 30 years ago, there were 100 publishers. Today there are less than 10. Overall regulation made American comic books a creative ghetto. Oh, the ghetto. Right. Of course, what's interesting is that you had other things at the time. You had things developed just a little later, like porno magazines. Right? Playboy, gentlemen's magazines. It was funny too about the Japanese with all the political incorrectness there. The minority groups in Japan actually they actually bitched a lot, and they actually got stuff. There was a Toho film where they had the Borokuman, right? Basically the hillbillies of Japan, who were descended from people who were basically exiled from villages early on. They protested against the movie, and they actually got it, I think, cut or something. So it's interesting to see that. Of course, you have the Ainu, right? The native Japanese. Doesn't it? Doesn't that sound retarded to say native Japanese? There's no Japan until the original, what are they called? Jormans come over. The Ainu are not Japanese. Why isn't that extended? Yeah, because we know why. Of course, and Koreans, right? You have the Koreans. So, and then you go, of course, you have a lot of, Jesus, this stuff I remember seeing. I was like, holy crap, right? And what I like he brings about here, right? The innovation of the comic in America did nothing to stem the growth of violence amongst young people in that society. That is true. There's also other factors of the violent wave that occurred in the 60s. It wasn't all young people. I mean, it was healthier when you had more violence spread out more evenly, okay? But the majority of it was being done not evenly, and now it is almost totally limited to that, which is not a healthy thing, actually. Anyway, just getting in here, right? One of the things too, right? The Japanese, it's not a Christian society, so a lot of these taboos, like look at this, right? They don't pass muster there, so they don't have a problem here, right? And of course, there's a conservative mixed in with them as well. You can say there's paganism, right? Or you have eroticism and you have sexes bathing together, but they're also sort of segregated. There's a balance there from tradition, right? which you can't do now, right? I like this point here too. He goes, when a young boy in Tokyo reads a lurid action comic, it is far more difficult for him to associate it with his surroundings than it would be for a child in New York or Detroit. That is true. Oh. Yeah. Also, in spite of the decadent, promiscuous image projected in the comics, Japan is a very conservative society, right? Nuance, balance, pressure release valves. Do you know what these things are? Right? The divorce rate is still low. Well, now they're not even getting married. Of course, this is from the 80s. They are also being infected by things, but there's something there that they don't have that we have. Keep saying. Anyway. So obviously, the Japanese comics are crazy. So you get you get the yaoi comics, right? Which is funny. I keep bringing it up, the male homosexual love. When you look at the androgynous people involved, like I keep saying, it's supposed to be women. It's supposed to be women here. So, oh man, if they knew, if you could only see what has been wrought, from 42nd Street as a little kid to 42nd Street, then the world, right? First we conquer Manhattan, then we conquer Berlin. So, and I'll include this here because I want to try to. I don't want to do 10 million videos on this comic industry. Talking just about the interesting concepts of it. A newcomer back then could easily make 50,000 a year. Of course, it's very competitive, and they bring up the late great Akira Toriyama broke all records with his comedy series Doctor Slump. And of course, one of the big things when you have a hit manga, you are gonna probably get an animation done of it. Right? Toriyama was 27 years old, man. And there's Shotaro Ishimori. This guy did a lot of stuff that you don't know, that people don't know about him. He created almost half the superheroes you have in Japan. And it's actually too, few artists have any formal art training, and many have never graduated from high school. Of course, these are the older ones, and they talk about how with the young ones, they're having a problem. Even then, they lack the real life experience necessary. Some of these guys in the '60s were real characters. Right? And a record, right? If a comic story in Japan is popular, its animation is virtually guaranteed. Right? And some more of the thing. Remember, this is adjusted for the '80s, my friend. Japan was in a different position economically, right? The idea of having assistants, right? Having the assistants, 400, 500 pages of comics a month. Oh my God, dude. So these guys are employing many people, right? For example, the guy who did Golgo 13, he has 15 full-time staff members. He considers himself it's like filmmaking with him as the director, where basically he at times he only pencils in the faces of the main characters. Everyone does the rest of the work. Of course, one of my faves, Go Nagai, right? Dynamic Productions employs 50 people. So these guys are making some real good money. Of course, most were not. And these guys, I mean, of course, Sleep, what the hell was that? Vacations, what the hell was that? You saw what happened with, what's his name? The guy from Berserk. Guy had a heart attack. So, anyway, it's just interesting looking at these things here. Of course, and the eternal battle. Remember you ever read about the old comic book artists in America? You'd have 10 guys working in a loft, no air conditioning. There's no air conditioning back there, with a guy with a fucking cigar in his mouth yelling at them while they're all dressed up with button shirts, making sure that they get the damn artwork on time. And of course, you had the same thing here. The most common complaints about artists from the editors were they worked sloppily, they did not study enough, they lacked common sense about deadlines, and they were lazy and they were arrogant. The artists, for their part, blamed the editors for all their problems. So, and it was chasing people, and they would even confine some artists to their hotel room or to a room and just have them with food until they were done. So, checking in on them, right? So they wouldn't sleep. That was just a fascinating little thing about the obviously you had vending machines with comic books. Of course, you had the newsstand. This is how we got comics. I don't know. Think they didn't need specialty stores like in America. And of course, they had magazines, right? Remember glossy magazines, like Animage, dude. Animage, man. I used to love Animage. Whenever I had some money, I would get one of those and just look at stuff all in Japanese. Okay, I have to figure out what's going on. All in Japanese. No one explaining nothing to me. So, and of course, these things are huge. And I have a few of these, man. These are really amazing. The anime komikusu, right? Animation comics, right? Comics with world balloons and everything, but from the stills of the animation. Okay, in some ways, that's the style I would like to draw. Would be more like the animation style. Okay. And of course, the merchandise, right? Or linked to that, of course, the albums from these TV shows. Anyway, I'm gonna have to do one more vid. Two more vids, I think. I know you're like, what the hell? I don't care, man. This was a really good book, man, on something that nobody knew anything about at the time.